Here if anybody wants.
Thank you everyone for coming. Welcome back for those who were away, including myself for the summer. I'd like to discuss today an aspect of Shmitah that even us here in Chutz La'aretz can tap into. As we know, the mitzvah of Shmitah is passed here in Eretz Yisrael. Many of the farmers were Meiser Nefesh to properly keep the Halachos of Shmitah. It's a great challenge, even in our modern times. Rabbi El just let me know that the Karen HaShvius, the great organization that helps out many of the farmers and did a great job trying to fundraise here to help them out to properly get through the year financially, is still collecting and in much need of great assistance from our American brethren to help out the Israeli farmers, and anybody can still help. That would be a great chizik for Karen HaShvius. But us here in Chutz La'aretz, most of the halachos of Shmitah don't really affect us on a day-to-day basis. However, there is one aspect of the mitzvah of Shmitah in general which is very applicable to us. Although many poskim hold that Zman Hazeh for us it might only be D'Rabbanan, might only be rabbinic, but nonetheless we have to get down the mitzvah. It is, even if it's only D'Rabbanan, it's definitely going to be a mitzvah and applicable to us, and that is this halach of Shmitah's Ksafim, that at the end of Shmitah, according to most Rishonim, all loans that are owned to us by fellow Jews will be erased. And we'll just start with the pasuk. It was in 2 weeks ago's parsha, and Parshas Re'eh. The pasuk says, we'll speak it out. The pasuk says, "V'zeh dvar hashmita." This is the matter of Shmitah. Shmot kol baal mashe yado. Every creditor shall remit, his authority over the loans, asher yashiv re'eyu, that he has lent to his friends. Lo yigos es re'eyu, he shall not press his fellow, v'esechav and his brethren, ki kara Shmitah Hashem, because there has been proclaimed Shmitah to Hashem. So this pasuk is our source for the mitzvahs aseh, the positive mitzvah to let go, to forgo all loans that are owned to us, step one. And step two, it's also mitzvahs lo saseh, of lo yigos, that a person cannot go ahead and approach and pressure his fellow Jew to pay him once Shmitah has kicked in. So now we have a very fascinating Gemara. That's number one on the source sheets, which will discuss some of the parameters of this halacha. The Gemara starts off on top of Lan Zaydam and Beis in Gittin. If someone comes over to the malveh, to the lender, after Shmitah is passed and says, "I'm returning the loan that I owned you. You lent me $100 a year ago, whatever it was. I'd like to pay you back." Says the Gemara, the lender, the malveh, has to say, "Thank you very much for trying to pay me back, but I was already mishamet the loan. I already gave up on the loan, and have a good day. The money is now yours." The Gemara says, however, but if the borrower, the lova, says, "Nonetheless, I still want to pay you back. At the end of the day, lemaisa, I have $100 of yours." The Gemara says, "Yikabel himenu," the lender, the malva, could receive the money from him. Shenemar v'zeh dvar hashmita. This is the matter of Shmitah, which the Gemara is explaining that once the malva says, "I was mishamet, I gave up on the loan," like the Torah says, so really you don't owe me the money anymore. If you want to pay me back, if the lova is persistent and continues to want to pay back, the malva is allowed to accept the money. And the Gemara continues, won't get involved in all the details right now, but it has to be done in a way of a matana. It can't be just like a joke that, there's any real obligation still standing. The malva has to accept it only as a matana from the lova, and can't be given in the way of an obligation. So again, the Gemara here is telling us very clearly that like we know, the mitzvah after the Shemitah year is passed, the lova does not owe the malva any more money. If he would come and want to pay back, the malva has to say mishamet ani. The first question I want to deal with is really going to open up the discussion is, why does he have to say mishamet ani? I was mishamet, like a personal proclamation. Someone comes over to you on Shabbos and says, a new religious Jew who's not learned yet about the halachos of Shabbos says, "I would like to do business with you today. I know you sell merchandise. Could you please sell this to me?" What do you respond? "I already accepted upon myself Shabbos. It's Shabbos morning, and therefore I cannot do business with you." That's not the right way to say it. You say, "Shabbos is now. It's Shabbos today. I can't do business with you." You don't say, if it's one thing if you accept Shabbos upon yourself early and it's Friday afternoon and it's only 6 o'clock in the summer and you decide to accept Shabbos upon yourself now. Okay, so you'll say, "I already accepted Shabbos early. I'm sorry, I can't do business anymore." But if it's Shabbos afternoon, 7th day of the week, and someone comes over to you, wants to do business, you don't respond by saying, "I accepted Shabbos upon myself. Now it's Shabbos for me." it's Shabbos. I can't do business. So what's pshat in this Gemara? The Gemara seems to saying that it's a personal thing. I was mishamit the loan. The malva, the lender, is saying, I already gave up this loan, therefore you can't pay me back. Who are you to say you gave up this loan? The Torah says the loan is over a bottle. It's totally gone. So what's pshat in mishamit ani? I gave up the loan. So I'd like to introduce the Halachos Rishonim, really in the essence of understanding this mitzvah of Shmitah's Ksafim. I'd like to jump down for a minute to number 3, which is the Yereim from the Rishonim, from the Monei HaMitzvos. And the Yereim I'll discuss in this mitzvah of Shmitah's Ksafim, of giving up the loans by the Shemitah year, says the following, where it's underlined in the second paragraph. He says, once Shemitah passed, the lova cannot really avoid the malva and say, well, I don't have to pay you back. Because technically, so to speak, in Dinei Choshen Mishpat, in practical business, you borrowed money from me, you still owe me money. Says the Yereim, until the malva actively says, Mishamet Ani, technically the lova still owes him money. It's not like Shabbos, where sunset hits, it's automatically Shabbos. Rosh Hashanah hits of the year at the end of Shmitah, starting the 8th year now. All of a sudden, it's automatically the loan was forgiven, says the Yereim. No, Shemitah doesn't work like that. Shemitah's Ksafim works, says the Yereim, that the loan is still technically active, the money is still owed, until the malva actually proclaims, I forego the loan, and you don't have to pay me back. However, says the Yereim, there's a catch, that lova could force the malva to say. The lova could take the borrower could take the lender to Bezdin and force him to say Mishamatani, because it's a mitzvah from the Torah. He can't go ahead and explicitly go against the mitzvah of the Torah, but the Yereim does say a chiddush that until the malva actively says Mishamatani, the loan is technically still obligated and owed. Therefore, as we'll discuss a little bit more later, it would seem that unless they're dealing with an irreligious individual, he doesn't necessarily know the mitzvah of Shemitah, that he has to say I was Mishamatani. So the loan is still active, and technically, if you take the money back, he transgressed the mitzvah of not foregoing the loan, but it's not that it's money not coming to him. The money is still, so to speak, coming to him. It's not like going over to a random person in the street and saying, give me $100. Right? Like there's no connection, no relationship between us. I never lent you $100. Right? There's really a relationship still exists here. The lova still owes the malva money, says the Yereim, and until the malva actively says Mishamatani, the loan is still active. Again, there's a technical issue that the lova has the right to take the malva to a bezdin and say you have to give up on loan. That's what the Torah says. But if that doesn't happen, technically the loan is still owned. That is the shita of the Yereim Arishon in how he explains the mitzvah of Shemitah's Ksafim.
So there's an aveir of just a loan being in existence on Shemitah? Or the aveir is to go ahead and blow yigos to collect it?
Okay, very good. Our Florence is raising a good point. Like we spoke at before, there are two parts to the mitzvah. There's an asay and a los asay. We'll get to this more in a minute. Chaim Kanievsky is bothered what comes first, because according to the Yereim, okay, hold on, I'll get back to you in a minute. You'll see. Because let's see what's the opposing view. Who argues on the Yereim? So that's number 2 in the sheet. That's the Mordechai. Mordechai, in the back of Masechtas Gittin, from the Chachmei Ashkenaz, from the Rishonim, he quotes a discussion between two of the Gedolim of Ashkenaz of his day, Rabbeinu Chizkiah and Rabbeinu Avigdor HaKohen. Rabbeinu Chizkiah sent Rabbeinu Avigdor HaKohen the following shaila that he had. The case was that there were two Jews that lent each other money. Reuven lent Shimon money, and it was an old loan. It was ready. Over 7 years had passed, and Shimon still did not pay back the money. Reuven says, no, enough is enough. I need to get my money back. He goes to Shimon and says, Shimon, pay back. Shimon says, Reuven, my fellow Jew, you forgot. A couple of years ago was Shmitah, and the loan automatically disappeared. I'm sorry, I don't have to pay it back anymore. You lose. Shmitah already was. So now they go to Bezdin, and Reuven wants to claim that it's true Shemitah passed, but since during Shemitah or after Shemitah there was never a discussion about the loan, so Reuven says, I never actively said Mishametani. The Gemara says, until you have to say Mishametani, I forgo the loan. I never said Mishametani. Shemitah was already 2 or 3 years ago. That's history. It's true Shmitah passed, but since I never actively gave up on the loan, so said Reuven, in this case, the lender said, I would like to still collect my loan, and I want Shimon to pay me back the money that he owes me. And that's a din Torah that came to Rav Chizkiah, and he says he wasn't sure. Is this Gemara literal, that you have to say Mishamatani, like the Yereim understood the Gemara, that until you say Mishamatani, the loan is still technically owed? Or perhaps it's automatic. Like many other mitzvahs, like we said, for example, like Shabbos, it's automatic. We don't need you to proclaim that today is Shabbos. It happened by itself already. So the Mordechai says as follows. It's a couple lines down. It's underlined where it says Ulefiha Inyan. Says the Mordechai. It seems to me Nira de Shvius Hafkasa de Malkahu. It's automatic. It's an abrogation, automatic annulment of the loan by the Almighty, by the Master of the Universe. The Torah tells us that Kam Shmitah, the loan disappears. Whether you said anything or not, it doesn't make a difference. If so, asks the Mordechai, why is it that the Gemara says you say Mishamatani? Seems like you have to actually do something. You have to say that Dibur, and until that, maybe Shmitah is not Chal. Says the Mordechai, no. The mitzvah is Chal by itself. The mitzvah, the loan automatically goes away. There's an additional mitzvah, a tack on, an extra thing that it's appropriate to say, I was Mishamet. He compares it to the halacha, the last line, he compares it to a halacha of a farmer who owns a livestock, and he has one of his cows give birth, and it's a firstborn, it's a bachar. The halacha is that bachar is kadosh. Automatically, that's the halacha that has to be brought to the kohen and all the halachos of firstborn animals. However, nonetheless, even though that happens automatically, there is also mitzvah to proclaim kadosh. That animal is holy. If the farmer never proclaims it, it's chal anyway. Nonetheless, it's a mitzvah d'Ram Yaleh, it's appropriate upon him to say it. But even if he never says it, the Mordechai explains, and everyone agrees to this by Bachar, it's automatically chal. Therefore, says the Mordechai by Shmitah's Ksafim, this halacha of Shmitah, it's the same thing. Even if the Malva never said Mishamatani, comes Shmitah, it's automatically the loan is null and void, and therefore, in this case, where even though Reuven never said I was Mishamet, since Shmitah passed over in that period, the loan has been erased, and he'll have to go get money from somewhere else. Shimon does not obligate to pay back Reuven.
Is there a special nusach that you say, or you just say Mishamet?
Well, it's fine. Good question. According to the Mordechai, you never even have to say anything. The only time you would have to say something, whether you say Mishametani in Hebrew, you say it Yiddish in French, in English, that doesn't make a difference. The point is that if the guy if Shimon would be a good Samaritan and come back and try to pay you back because he did borrow money from you, you just have to say, well, there was Shmitah. The exact wording is not important because you're not really doing anything by saying that speech. You're just kind of saying, he's kind of playing down that you just right. But even if you wouldn't do it, the Mordechai is saying, then the mitzvah is chal nonetheless, and the loan is totally erased.
He could have done this according to the Ureim also. Once he's in Beis Din, the Ureim says Beis Din can force him to say, I need Shamet on there.
Granted.
He could have done that also.
Right, fine. Technically right in that case, but the underlying, I guess, the underpinning understanding of the mitzvah is an afkamina here between the Ureim and the Mordechai. This we want to emphasize. This is going to take us through to a lot of what we're going to discuss. According to the Ureim, the mitzvah of Shemitah's Ksafim is not automatic. I need to say something in order for it to actually be active. In order to make it chal, I need to say this dibur shamatani, or I forgive the loan. According to the Mordechai, it's automatic. Even if you don't say anything, it's automatically erased.
Well, I guess this from the lawyer throws in his 2 cents. They talk about these being either void or voidable. So sometimes maybe that's kind of what they're talking about over here.
I'm not familiar with that in secular law. What exactly the difference is between void and voidable? I mean, whatever you tell me,
voidable
I'll be
means
educated.
you have to take some extra. You have to take some extra step, like go to court to enforce the thing actually being made void. It doesn't become void just by itself from the beginning. One of them is, I guess, the Mordechai saying it's void, but you don't have to do anything, and I guess the Ureim saying it's a voidable thing, but you have to take an extra step.
Sounds equatable. Again, I'm not familiar with that, the nuance of the law. Hope never to get involved in it, but that it seems like what you're saying is the same basic idea. So that's the basic machlokas of how Shemitah's Ksafim works. So on the next page, we'll jump down to minute number 5. It's from the Sefer Derech Emunah, which is a Sefer from Chaim Kanievsky. It's quite a large set of the. It's written like in a Mishnah Berurah style, where the top is the Rambam, of Hilchas Zrayim, of all the various halachos that are applicable to the land of Israel, in Zrayim, in the aspects of the plantings. And he has a pirush in the bottom, like a Mishnah Brew, like a running pirush along with halacha, and then he has like biurim on the side, similar to the bir halacha of the Mishnah Brew. And at the bottom he has like tziyunim, the footnotes, explaining where everything comes from. This is from Derech Hamuna, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky Sefer in Hilchos Shmitah, in Perek Test, where that's the Perek the Rambam dedicates to discussing the halachos of Shmitas Ksafim. And there Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky gets involved in the discussion, let's discuss this mitzvah of Shmitas Ksafim, if it's applicable to women or not. Now, as we know, there's the classic exemption for women from mitzvahs asay shazman grama, any time-bound mitzvah, women are patur from. So how do we view mitzvah Shmitas Ksafim? At first glance, we should say that mitzvah Shmitas Ksafim is like a mitzvah asay shazman grama. It only kicks in by the end of Shmitah. It's a specific time period when it happens. So perhaps you can argue and say women are patur. Furthermore, he says, according to the Yereim, it makes a lot of sense that it's mitzvah seisha zman grama because there's something you actively have to do. You actively have to get up and say, or once the person tries to pay you back, you have to say, I was mishamet. Until that happens, the mitzvah is not chal. So therefore, perhaps you can argue and say it's mitzvah seisha zman grama, and women should be patur. However, he says, perhaps you can say that there's a lo saseh here. Like we said, there's lo yigos. This is what our Florence was really bringing up before. How does a lo saseh play in according to the Yereim? Let's take a step back for a minute. If you don't go like the Yereim, if you go like the Mordechai, that it's automatic. So that means at the end of the 7th year, automatically Shemitah kicks in, and automatically then that means there's a lav of lo yigos. Then women will be obligated that they are not allowed to go ahead and pursue people who owe them money because they are obligated in olavin. It's a lav. Even if because according to the Mordechai, there's no mitzvah that actively have to say anything. There's no asay for them to actively get up and proclaim, I was mishamet my loans. It happens automatically. So what's incumbent upon them is to keep the lo saseh, which women are obligated in all lo saseis, all negative commandments, and they cannot go ahead and oppress and go ahead and chase after those people, pursue the people who owe them money. Okay, so that's very straightforward. According to the Yereim, do we say the same equation? Meaning, does the lo saseh exist? Does the negative commandment that refrains us from collecting loans, does that play in even before I was mishamet a loan? Or that only plays in after I annul the loan? If I say that the lo saseh only is active after I actively said mishamet ani, so then, argues Rav Chaim Kanievsky, according to the Yereim, it should be that women are patur from the mitzvahs asay from the mitzvah of Shmitas Ksafim, because it only could happen after something that's time-bound mitzvah. Meaning it's true, it's a lo saseh, the lo yigos aspect of it, but if that can only kick in after they say this proclamation of mishamet ani, okay, so it's a loophole. Since they don't have the mitzvahs asay, they never get to the mitzvahs lo saseh. If, however, you would argue and say that the mitzvahs lo saseh is not directly connected to the asay, and therefore, even if they never actively were mishamet their loans, there's a freestanding lo saseh that once Shemitah comes, they are not allowed to go ahead and pursue loans that are owed to them. Then women are still going to be obligated because they're bound by this negative commandment that holds them back from ever going ahead and pursuing a loan. If someone would come over to them and they're not pursuing anybody, then perhaps they don't have to say mishamet ani, because that perhaps is a mitzvah seisha zman groma. But going ahead and actively pursue it, if you would say that the lo saseh comes first, then you can argue and say that women would be patur. Chakira, we can speculate one way or the other. Now, Rov Rishonim, the general consensus is, like the Mordechai, that the mitzvah of Shmitas Ksafim is Afkasa de Malka. It's automatically null and void. Therefore, women are fully obligated in this mitzvah like men, because we don't need them to have any positive action, any positive amira of Mishamet Ani. Automatically, the only thing that's applicable to them is the lo saseh. They cannot go ahead and pursue the loan. Okay? So they are fully obligated in the mitzvah. And that's the general consensus. That's the way the Chinuch quotes the mitzvah, and that's the way the Minchas Chinuch as well. Number 4 says that women and Ketanim are going to be fully obligated in this mitzvah because it's automatic, not like the Yereim, and therefore we don't need them to do anything, and they're fully obligated. And what that means is that they're not be allowed to collect the loans, whether they go ahead and want to, whether it comes to them or whether they go ahead and pursue it. However, the question is still standing. It's tzarachin in the Yereim. He doesn't come out one way or the other definitively if the mitzvah will be applicable to the women or ketanim or not.
Well,
that's question number one according to the Yereim.
Maybe they'd be overload egos, but they could still collect the debt.
Right, meaning that's arguable. Meaning, so they can't go ahead and actively pursue it, a woman, according to the Yereim. But perhaps if the borrower would come to their door and want to pay them back, so maybe they can take that money. Maybe you can't obligate them to say Mishamer Ani, or perhaps Mishamer Ani comes first, and you can even let them go ahead and pursue it, because since Shmitah never kicked in for them at all, then maybe they can even go ahead and pursue a loan.
Main thing also, low egos applies. Low egos applies, and it's also for them to collect it. But if they did collect it, since they didn't say Mishamed Ani, they can still collect it even though they're doing an Isser.
Well, the Isser then, if you say low egos comes first, so to speak, then they didn't do any Isser. The person came to their door and offered them money. They didn't pursue anything. That's still arguable. Then Reb Chaim Kanievsky offers an explanation. What shot in the Yereim? Why did the Yereim say what he said, that the mitzvah of Shmitas Ksafim is, so to speak, optional? Not really optional, but meaning it's dependent on the person tapping into it and actively saying it. Why didn't he say Pashit, like the Mordechai, like the other Rishonim, that it's a regular mitzvah that comes automatically, whether or not you actively accept it upon yourself or not? There's no freedom of choice over here. Argues Reb Chaim Kanievsky and wants to explain, perhaps you can say the Yereim understood as follows. What's the difference? We said before, one of the Mordechai's rayas for the fact that it's afkasa the malka, it happens automatically, is from a case of bechor, where a person has the livestock, he has a cattle, one of his cows give birth to a newborn baby, so it's the firstborn of that cow, it's automatically a bechor, it's kadosh. However, there's still a mitzvah for the farmer to say, this animal is kadosh. Why? Says perhaps you can say because there's a maisa needs to be accompany this mitzvah. Just having a kadosh tikka behema doesn't just sit in your field. There's something you have to go ahead now and do. You have to get up, take the animal, bring it to the kohen. There's a whole procedure you have to follow. So perhaps you can say that since there's a procedure that has to follow, you have to get that procedure going. You have to get the balls in motion. You have to get things rolling by proclaiming it kadosh and then going ahead and following through and taking it to the kohen. But over here, where there's nothing to set in motion, everything just rolls by itself. Shmitah hits. The loan is null and void. The only thing we're telling you to do is be passive and not go ahead and pursue it. So therefore, until maybe you say Mishamet Ani, the mitzvah would not be chal. Again, we're trying to explain why, according to the Yereim, there's a specific mitzvah to say kadosh by a bachar, and we don't have that specific mitzvah by Shmitah unless you want to activate the mitzvah, so to speak. Why is that? Because by bachar, again, the mitzvah happens automatically. The animal is born. The animal is kadosh. Why is there now a mitzvah to go ahead and say the animal is kadosh? Without you, it happened anyway. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, because since there's more to still be done, there's a procedure to follow. Therefore, I have to get that procedure rolling. I have to say kadosh and now go ahead and bring it to the kohen. In a similar case, I'll try to give another example. You have an Eved Ivri, you own a Jewish slave. After 6 years, he goes free. It's automatic. That's what Torah says. Nonetheless, there's a mitzvah for the master to say, okay, you're now free. Why? Even if the master doesn't say it, it happens automatically. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, perhaps you can explain, because since there's now an additional mitzvah of when a Jewish slave owner sends his slave free, the pasuk says, ha'anik ta'anik lo. You have to send them off with presents. You give him a nice severance package. You don't just send him out into the street and back to his old lifestyle. There's what to still do when he goes free. Since there's still what to be done, and there's an accompanying maisa to it, therefore you have to say, you are now free, here are your presents, have a nice life. As opposed to Shmitas Ksafim, nothing happens afterwards. What happens? The mitzvah comes, and what? All you have to do is be passive and not collect the loans. If so, argues the Yereim perhaps, and says, therefore it must be, I have to says Mishamet Ani, because without it, nothing is going to happen, because there's no other Maisa that's going to kick into place. All the other mitzvos, Bechor and Eved, it's proper to say it because you're setting other things into motion. But without it, it's going to happen anyway. Here, when nothing else is going into motion, the only thing that you're doing is being passive and not collecting the loan. Perhaps you can say, therefore, it's necessary to say the Mishamatani, because otherwise we have there's no semblance of you doing any mitzvah. It's just happening in back, without any active participation of the malveh, so you never know the mitzvah is happening. Therefore, perhaps that's why the Reim would have to say that you need an active amira. Okay, let's move on. That's what Chaim Knesset wanted to suggest, perhaps why the Reim held his mitzvah. So again, let's just recap what we have so far before we move further. But we still need to, the main points where we spoke out, the mitzvah shitas ksafim, and we have this chakira, this machlokas rishonim. What is the essence of the mitzvah? Is it, like the Mordechai says, afkasa de malka, it's automatic that it happens whether you like it or not? Or like the Reim, in that until I activate the mitzvah, it doesn't kick in until I actually say Mishamata.
What about Kiddush HaChodesh?
Okay.
Where he has the name Kiddush.
Right, the Bezdin, that's a mitzvah upon Bezdin.
So where would that fit in?
Well, there, I would say, okay, that's an interesting discussion. Because let's say Bezdin's making it a Chasr month, right? So until they say Mekudesh, for sure, right, Rosh Chodesh didn't happen yet. There's a Machlokus in the Gemara Rosh Hashanah, let's say it's going to be a Malay. Does Bezdin need to say Mekudesh or not? One man, we paskin yes. But one man Yom says no. Why not? Because it already happened automatically. No month could be more than 30 days. Because really every month is 29 and a half days and a whole bunch of halakim, right? Fine. So really no month. So one man Yom in the Gemara there says that it's for Kitchu Shamayim. It already happened automatically. So that would fit in nicely because you don't need anything. There's nothing we need actively to do. However, we pass it out like that, so that'll be a discussion why we need the active Amira and Bezdin, because there is that Amira of Bezdin has that right to decide if it's going to be a 29-day month or 30-day month. So
they would sort of blend in here somehow.
Right. We'll have to. That'll be a different discussion to figure out how to blend it. But yeah, that's definitely blendable. Okay. Let's get now involved in another discussion. So we said before, like the Gemara told us in Gittin, that if the borrower comes ahead and approaches the lender and says, I'd like to pay you back, the lender has to say, I'm sorry, Shmitah, I can't receive any money. However, the Rambam paskins in number 6, that anybody who returns a chov after Shmitah already made it null and void, the Rambam says, Kol hamachzir chov, anybody who returns a loan avral of Shvius, that Shmitah passed over, Ruach chachamim nocha heimenu, the ruach of the spirit of the chachamim is pleased from him, meaning he's doing the right thing. However, the Rambam continues, you can't say it, I'm giving to it as an obligation. You have to be clear that you're giving it in a way of a present. But nonetheless, the Rambam pasking that it's appropriate to return the loan. So once again, in number 7, we'll go to Derech Hamunah of Chaim Kanievsky Sefer, and there he just explains. He says in Os Kuf Nun Ches in number 7 that ruach chachama v'chasidus bekirbo. This person is showing that he has a spirit of wisdom and being pious in his innards. Because he doesn't want to benefit from other people's money. At the end of the day, he borrowed $100 from this guy. He doesn't want to benefit from it, so he wants to do the right thing and give back the money that he got from somebody else. And furthermore, he says, because we don't want to withhold people from ever lending money, we want to encourage, which is why we're not going to get involved so much in that discussion now, but this is why originally Hillel, the Gemara discussed, was Mesakene Prusbol, in order that to encourage people to lend money, people shouldn't feel they're not going to get their money back. Okay, so the Rambam's paskening that it's appropriate for Ruach Chacham Noche Menu to pay back a loan, even if the Malveh is saying I was Mishamit. However, he brings in the footnote there, which I copied over in Shin Samach Vav, an interesting, cute story from the Chazon Ish. He says over there, V'he'idu al Moronzal. It's said over testimony on the Chazon Ish, that's who refers to the Chazon Ish as Moronzal, that the Chazon Ish had borrowed money from somebody before Shmitah, and Shmitah passed, and for whatever reason the Chazon Ish didn't pay him back. We don't know exact details of the story. The Chazon Ish comes back to that person after Shmitah and says, I'd like to pay it back. Here's the lira, whatever he borrowed from him. I'd like to pay back that money. Here it is. And the lender said, I was Mishamet, and the Chazon Ish walked away. The Chazon Ish didn't press him and try to pay the money. What do you mean? We have a Rambam here which says, we can only be certain that the Chazon Ish for sure was very scrupulous in all mitzvahs, and for sure he would have wanted to fill this Rambam Ruach Chacham Milchei Menu. So Reb Chaim Kanievsky ends off the story just by saying, Ki Hikkerbo, the Chazanish recognized in this person, Shebritzono Lekayim Mitzvah Shmitas Ksafim. This person had such a desire to fulfill the mitzvah, so he could have continued to press him perhaps, but this person was so happy, the lender was so happy that he got to say, I was Mishamet, I forgave the loan completely, I don't want this money, it's not mine, it doesn't belong to me, do whatever you want with it. The person was so excited that he got to fulfill the mitzvah, so the Chazon Ish did not press him to accept that money. We'll get back to this point a little bit later. But that's an interesting anecdote. So you lose out. You can't. You're not able to. You're not able to get it. He had a lot of other merits. The Chazon Ish had that he was able to get Ruach HaMelech, but at least from this halacha, he wouldn't be able to get it.
So in that case, it was better. He did what was better.
Right. So that he fulfilled the will of the other yid. So like Rav Nila suggests, that's also mitzvah v'hatarecha kamocha, and that's also quite the Torah is noiche hemenu, right? Now let's bring us to another discussion, which is really discussed in number 8. We'll speak it out. Let's say we have unfortunately two Jews who are not yet religious, they're not well learned in the halachos of Shmitas Ksafim, but they're good Jews, and they lend each other money. So you have Reuven lending Shimon money, and they're not familiar with the halacha of Shmitah. They don't know that come Shmitah year the loan is null and void. Now the lova comes and pays back the malva after Shmitah. Again, they don't know anything about Shmitah, gives him back the $100, and everyone lives happily ever after. The next year, the malva gets into Esha Torah, starts learning something, and now he learns about the halacha of Shmitas Ksafim. And he says, I got to think about this. Just a couple of years ago with Shmitah, now he's educated, and I took back money from my friend, who is also a fellow Jew, after Shmitah. Now, what do I do with that money? Do we say, okay, let bygones be bygones, this is an old story, I got it already, I'll move on with my life? Or does he now have to go seek out his fellow Jew, who maybe he even lost contact with, he might have to go to great ends to return this money that he borrowed, that was paid back to him by his fellow Jew after Shemitah already made the loan null and void? That's the question. So right away, we should say, this is going to be dependent on the machlokus we discussed previously. We have a machlokus how Shmitas Ksafim works. If you say like the Yereim, that until you say Mishamet Ani, the loan is still active. So even though you're supposed to say Mishamet Ani, Bezdin can force you to say it, but practically in this case, this Malveh, who at the time of Shemitah was not yet observant, never said Mishamet Ani, so the loan was never null and void, so the money was still owed to him, so the money is his. Should he, could he, would have, if he would have known, he should have, could have, would have, abolished the loan, but he didn't. So he'll clap al chet now, he'll do tshuva from now on. He's a good Jew, and for next Shemitah he'll abolish all his loans. But that money that's by him is not stolen money, because it was technically owed to him, and he never activated Shemitah, so to speak, that he would have to return the money. However, according to the Mordechai, it's afkasa de malka, automatic annulment of the loan. Whether you knew about Shemitah or you didn't know about Shemitah, that money by you is stolen cash. It's not your money. Therefore, says Rav Chaim Kanievsky, since many Rishonim go like this Mordechai, and that's a general consensus, it should therefore follow that someone who now was Choser B'tshuva and knows about this halacha and obviously realizes that he has money from a fellow Jew that was paid back to him after Shemitah, it's Gezel Biyado, the money is stolen goods, and you have to go ahead and return it to the person who paid him back after Shemitah. And if you go back for a minute to number 4, the Minchas Chinuch, you can read it inside, it also says the same idea, that if someone pays you back after Shemitah and you accepted that money, it's Gezel, and you have to go ahead and do whatever you can to return that money. That's what Rav Chaim Kanievsky seems to come out in number 8. However, I wasn't able.
The rabbis seems to hold like the Yereim.
Why?
He says, son of Levi.
Okay. Meaning, when the guy comes to him, he has to say that it was Shemitah. If he doesn't say it, what does it mean? Meaning, perhaps you can argue, like our Bamberg is saying, that if you don't say it, nothing happened, or maybe the Ram only means to say that when the person approaches you, you have to make sure to let him know that you abolish loan. But if that never happens, and you never go ahead, and there's no communication, is that money still owed or not? Technically. Bottom line, is that money still owed or not? According to the Mordechai, no. According to the Reim, yes. So how does the Rambam weigh in on that?
I don't know.
Okay, maybe only Tzarech Laim. I'm saying is when the guy comes over to you and actually wants to pay him back. You just have to let him know that you were mishamin it, but maybe it really happened without you. Okay, you can argue that point perhaps. But Rav Shlomo Zalman, which is not copied here on the paper, Shlomo Zalman Orbach in Minchas Shlomo, but not in Shuvas, in Mishnayos Shvius, he had discussed this at great length, this specific question of a Baal Tshuva, someone who was not familiar with the halachos of Shmitah, and now only later learned about the halachos. What does he do with that money that he might have collected from loans from fellow Jews after Shmitah? So he gets involved in this discussion and says it should be dependent, like we just spoke out, in the Mordechai and the Yereim. However, he concludes he wants to be mekel, he wants to be lenient on the Baal Tshuva, and he says perhaps you can argue it's as if there's an unspoken tonight. I don't want to get bogged down in all the details now, but there are certain stipulations that even if you're a religious fellow and you're lending money before Shmitah, there are certain stipulations that you could speak out that will bypass the halachos of Shmitah from nullifying your loan. There's a certain formula you can say that could make a stipulation ahead of time that Shmitah is not going to affect this loan and you still owe me the money even 10 years later. Okay, take that for granted. Says Shlomo Zalman, once we have such a halacha in place, perhaps you can argue that there's an unspoken tonight. Because if this lender would have known at the time, he was irreligious, but if he would have known at the time that in a year from now, you're lending this guy money, he's not going to, if he didn't pay you back in a year, your loan is null and void, he would have never lent the money. There's anan sadi, to borrow a term from the Gemara, we can testify, says Shlomo Zalman, that he would never have lent the money. He only lending the money with an unspoken stipulation that he'll get it back no matter how many years down the line. And therefore, Shlomo Zalman concludes he would like to be mekel. He does say he does say that he has a lot of logic. I'm speaking at one point of it. He says, although I will confess, says Shlomo Zalman, that the logic is not compelling. But since there is a sheet of the Yereim, and there are other Rishonim who go like it, and we want to be mekel, we don't make the guy's life so miserable now that he's choser b'tshuva, and you have to go, tracking down everybody who might have got a quarterback after Shmitah from. Therefore, Shlomo Zalman argues you could be mekel and will not have to return those loans. Obviously, if you're able to, if a person knows who he lent the money to, you can seek him out, not tell you from anayim, it'll be great. But to say you're obligated, Shlomo Zalman says you wouldn't be obligated to go ahead and return the money. Let's discuss another question, which is in number 9 here, which is also Shlomo Zalman Orbach here in Shuvas, where he has a lot of points he raises about Shemitah's stuff, and we're going to focus on one of them, which might be applicable to us here in America specifically. He says, let's say you have a case. Let's say you have make a case like this. You have a nice American Jew who visits the land of Israel. Let's say you went this past year. I know Barry just shared with me that he was suggested not to go this past year because of the halachos of Shemitah's karka are very tedious. But let's say you wanted to go ahead and see how the farmers are living, and you went during this year, and a fellow Jew in Israel came over to you and said, Rabbi Yid, I see you're a rich American Jew. That's automatic. And I need money. Could you please lend me $1,000? I'll give you my Teudat Zehut number. We'll make an official document. I will pay you back next time you come to Israel. Don't worry. Everything will be great. I need $1,000. Could you lend me the money? And your heart goes out for this poor Israeli Jew, and you lend him the money. Great. No problem. You come back to America. You have his documents in your hand. Your next trip is planned for another year from now, and you're confident that you'll get back your money. Fine. Comes Rosh Hashanah. It's time to write a prosbul. You're going to write a prosbul Erev Rosh Hashanah. You're going to follow. We'll get to that shortly in a minute. You're going to write this document that ensures that you'll bypass, so to speak, the laws of Shemitah's Ksafim, and you'll be able to collect your money. But now you have a question. It's Erev Rosh Hashanah. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon in St. Louis, and you're going to write your prosbul. What time is it in Israel? 11 o'clock in the evening. They're 8 hours ahead. By them, Rosh Hashanah already set in. If you would be in Israel at that given second, the loan is already null and void. You're in America. So by you, the Shemitah's Ksafim didn't start yet. But by the Love, by the borrower, Shemitah's Ksafim already made his loan null and void. Who do we look at? Do we go with the Malveh, who's now in America? For him, Shemitah's Ksafim didn't kick in yet, and therefore you can say he can still write the prosbul. Or do we go with the Lova, the lender, who's in Eretz Yisrael, and for him, Shemitah's Ksafim already made his loan null and void?
Something is at the end of the year.
Right, okay, the end of Shmitah. So this year, so coming to the end of the year, my beautiful example I said, right? You went this year to Eretz Yisrael, so it's kicking in this Erev Rosh Hashanah as the last time to make the prosbul, right? So it's coming up in 3 weeks approximately, right? And so you're here in St. Louis, Missouri. Hopefully none of us will be here, but in case Mashiach doesn't come, we'll still be here. And you need to write the prusbul. Let's just say it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon for argument's sake. You're going to write the prusbul. So here, Shmitah the Shmitah's ksafim wasn't activated yet, but in Eretz Yisrael it already happened. So who do we go with? Do we go with where the lender is, or do we go where the borrower is? Question. So perhaps we can argue. Shlomo Zalman leaves this as a question. Doesn't really give a definitive psak. It's a question. Therefore, it's always advisable that we'll do the prusbul earlier in the morning, shortly after Shachar, so it's before Eretz Yisrael, has Rosh Hashanah yet either.
China.
China might be more of a question. Okay, therefore, don't do business. So that's another reason not to do business with China.
Both sides have to sign the prusbul?
No, the prusbul has to be written by the lender. And once he makes the prusbul, it doesn't make a difference if the malva knows about it or not. The lova is still able to collect. However, perhaps we can argue and say that this shaila should be dependent on our discussion between the Mordechai and the Arayim. According to the Arayim, that the lender, have to activate Shmitah, and until that, Shmitah's ksafim is not fully active. Perhaps we can say until the malva says Mishamatani, so the loan was not null and void. Even though where the lova is, it's in Eretz Yisrael, it's already Rosh Hashanah, and it's already the 8th year, and Shmitah's ksafim should have been activated. But since I, the malva, am in Chutz La'aretz, Rosh Hashanah didn't happen yet, you can argue and say that Shmitah's ksafim didn't kick in yet, therefore I can still write a prusbul. However, perhaps you can argue that since according to the Mordechai, it happens afkasa the malka, it happens automatically. So maybe you can say that wherever the lova is, that's where the money is owed. The money is owed. The lova is one who actively owes the money. The money is owed to me, but he who owes the money, perhaps Shemitah already kicked in by him. So the Torah erased his chiyuv to pay me back. His chiyuv is where? In Eretz Yisrael. His chiyuv in Eretz Yisrael. He's lucky. By him it's already Rosh Hashanah. I'm lazy. Didn't write my prusbul yet. Even if I write a prusbul, it could be, perhaps I would not be able to collect that loan. You can argue that, yeah.
Just going to throw in the lawyer thing again.
Okay, yeah.
They talk about conflict of laws, which the law of which jurisdiction is going to apply. So that's a similar parallel here as well.
Okay, and what would and second law?
I don't know how they would resolve this.
You don't know,
sure, but they might look at where the law was made.
Okay, that Shlomo Zalman gets involved in that also in a different shah, but we're not going to discuss that right this minute. But in that same shul, we discussed maybe that's one of the possibilities it gives. Maybe you should look where the contract was made, meaning where the original loan took place. Okay, arguable. Let's just conclude this Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai, on number 10, he first starts with a cute story that he said he was the chief rabbi of Baghdad. He says there was a family that was having the Seder together on Pesach, and the son was a successful businessman. And he's leading the Seder. He invites his parents to his wealthy, his fancy house, and his parents are with him, and everyone's living up in the luxury over there in Baghdad of the day. And the son is up to korech, and he makes himself a nice big korech sandwich, and he's living up like a king, and he says, this is like Hillel used to do, like the whole thing we say in the Haggadah. The father, who might have had a couple of points to raise with the son, sounds like from the whole story, but okay, he says to his son, don't forget about Hillel on Erev Rosh Hashanah. Son turns to his father and says, Father, I'm learned, but Hillel has nothing to do, there's no korech on Erev Rosh Hashanah, that much I know. And the father says, yeah, but there's another halacha of Hillel, like we spoke about previously, shortly, halacha of prusbul. Don't forget to write a prusbul so that you can continue to collect your loans that people owe you after Shmitah, because if you don't do that, you'll have to follow the law of the Torah that all loans are null and void. After that story, the Ben Ish Chai brings up some discussion about prusbul, and he brings a fascinating custom. He says, if you think about it for a minute, again, we don't have time to discuss all halachos of prusbul, a lot of parameters of it, but the basic idea is, you write a prusbul for Rosh Hashanah, that basically what it does is, it gives Bezdin the power to help you collect your loans. Once that happens, you can go ahead and collect your loan even after the 8th year, after Shmitah has passed. Okay, that's the way it works, basically. Think about it for a minute. What have we done? So we've saved ourselves in our bank accounts, we've benefited, because now we can collect the loan. But we're losing out on the mitzvah of Shemitah's ksafim. There's a mitzvah saseh to forgive all loans by Shemitah, and the law say you shall not go ahead and pursue someone who owes you money. If you're going to write a prusbul, so it's good for your bank account, you can collect the money, but you're missing out on a mitzvah. Why would you want to do that? Okay, if a guy owes you $1 million, okay, obviously, you want to get the money. There's a certain price, you don't want to pay. But, if it's a smaller loan, why do you have to write a prusbul? So says the Ben Ish Chai, this is what he suggested to his people in Baghdad of the day. he said, of course everyone should write a pruzbul. That was a takanas chazal, and it's appropriate to write it. But in order not to miss out on the mitzvah of Shemitah's ksafim, after you write the pruzbul, you should go ahead and find a fellow Jew to lend money to. It doesn't have to be a lot, a quarter, a dollar, some small amount. Lend him the money, and then when he comes back to pay you after Rosh Hashanah, you get the mitzvah, and you can say, nope, I was mishamet alone. And therefore, you get both things. You get both miles. You wrote the pruzbul, so anybody who owes you a substantial amount of money, you can still collect. And you also get the mitzvah of Shemitah's ksafim that when you lent this person the money, it was after your pruzbul. Therefore, the person comes back to pay you after Rosh Hashanah, you could say I was mishamet. So last Shmitah, one second, I just want to finish up. Last Shmitah, 7 years ago, I saw this Ben Ish Chai, and I was learning in Lakewood at the time, and I went to ask Rabbi Forsheimer, who is the Rosh Bezin of the Lakewood Yeshiva. I went to ask him, so do we go with this Ben Ish Chai or not? Should we, it's a Sephardi Sefer, I wasn't sure, I didn't see it brought down in the contemporary Ashkenazic Sfarim, so should we follow it or not? So he smiles, he looks at me and says, would you like to borrow a quarter? So I took that as it's a good idea. But then I was stuck because I borrowed a quarter for a Forshire, but now I didn't get the mitzvah, so I went to my chavrusa, and he also did the same thing to me. So until we found somebody who bought into my deal, and Baruch Hashem last Shmitah, I was zocha that after Shmitah I went over to our Forshire, I tried to pay him back, he said I was mishamet, so I got to help him do the mitzvah. Great. Now, here's the shaila, one last shaila. In Eretz Yisrael, this is very popular. Who popularized this minig in Eretz Yisrael? All the Moistais Tzedakah. What did they do? It's a big fundraising shtick in Eretz Yisrael before Shemitah. One of the people who work for the Tzedakah will come over to your house and say, Shemitah is coming. There's mitzvah Shemitah's ksafim. You're going to write a pruzbul, but you're going to miss out on the mitzvah, like the Ben Ish Chai writes. I'll give you a great idea. Why don't you lend me? I work for the tzedakah. Lend it tzedakah 5 shekel, small amount of money, right? And I'll come back to you after Shmitah and pay back, and you'll get the mitzvah Shemitah's ksafim, and I'll give the money to tzedakah. It's a win-win. You get the mitzvah Shemitah's ksafim, tzedakah gets money, everything's great. Okay, so they get a lot of people. It's a great fundraiser, and they get a lot of people to give them small donations before Shemitah. Now here's the shaila. What's the shaila? Since you know this ahead of time, or even if you don't know it necessarily ahead of time, that you're going to end up giving the money to tzedakah, could you say that you can subtract that money from Meiser money? Because you know it's going to tzedakah. Again, you give it as a loan.
Meiser in which year?
Okay, all right, 1 second. Fine. You want to subtract that money from you give 10% or 20% of the money to tzedakah as Meiser. Since you know this money is ultimately going to end up by tzedakah, could you now subtract that money that you're giving with this shtick, right, for tzedakah or not? Could you subtract that from your tzedakah account? So now, l'chora, you can argue and say it should be dependent on the machlokes, the Mordechai and the Yereim. If you learn that the mitzvah of Shemitah itself is like the Mordechai, that it's automatic, then it's a loan. I lent it tzedakah money. The Torah takes away that money from me, right? It's not owed to me anymore, so I can't subtract it from tzedakah anymore because I didn't actively give it to them. The Torah just said the loan is null and void. However, perhaps you can argue, if you hold like the Yereim, that until I actively say Mishamatani, the loan is not really null and void, perhaps you can argue that I can still subtract that money from tzedakah, because until I have the right, so to speak, not to say Mishamim, not to activate Shmitah. If I do that, then what I'm doing is I'm actively giving that money to tzedakah now, and then perhaps you can say, we subtract that money from Meiser. Thank you everyone for coming.